And I've told guys the same thing. It's like you would tell a guy the same thing. You'd be like, look, you're short. You don't have a lot of money. You don't have a lot of status. Let's not just hit on only the 10s. I'm not saying you can't have an attractive woman. You're not going to get a 10. Like, let's be real. Like, I've had to have this conversation with a guy. It's just not going to happen. A woman that's attractive to you, talk to her. Like, you don't have to be like, she has to be the hottest woman anyone's ever seen. It's not because we're trying to be mean. It's just, you got to be realistic about it. But if you're going to compromise your standards, compromise them on maybe the looks or maybe the status, but don't compromise them on the character and the values.
Beyond the perfect we discover, through our flaws we complete each other. Better than perfect we stay, through every fault we find our way.
All right, welcome back to the Better Than Perfect podcast, where every week we share with you how two imperfect people helping each other grow equals one better than perfect relationship.
That's right. And you're back for part 2.
Yeah, part 2. I guess we'll just cut straight to it, right? No
well, should we just say this is the how to attract a man versus keep a man episode?
Yeah. So this is like, if you haven't seen part 1, I would go back and watch that, because this is basically how to attract a man versus how to keep a man. And in the previous episode, we were mostly targeting
women in their 20s, younger women.
Yeah, younger women. And we're going to wrap that part up with your statements on that, and then we'll talk about older women.
That's true. Yeah. So John ended the last episode kind of talking about what women could do to ensure that when they get older, as a woman, that their man is still attracted to them and isn't just going to leave them for a younger woman. Because, I mean, you hear that all the time from women being like, oh, well, he's just going to leave you for a younger woman. And, you know, and a lot of men do that for like multiple reasons. Some men do it because they're not treated correctly, like you said, and they're kind of like, well, why wouldn't I be with someone younger if I can get someone younger?
Right.
Some men start out where they don't have status or, you know, they're not making a lot of money and they're with somebody, and then they become more wealthy or get a higher status and they'll leave because now they can get those women. And I mean, I don't think that's the right way to be at all, but that's also another possibility. And, you know, as a woman, again, you know, I'm not that far from my 20s, but at the same time, I know the same reality of I'm getting older and we're having this conversation, and I know that you love me, and I know that you've told me multiple times that you can't wait for us to get older and things like that. And I believe you. Yeah. But it's even
scary.
hard for me
Yeah.
to hear, you know, well, men, they're super attracted to this and it just drastically changes like when you get older. And as a woman, it feels kind of hopeless. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to lie, because it's something you can't change. We're all getting older.
Yeah.
Or we're in the ground. You're either getting older or you're in the ground. And neither of them, you know, are you can't be in a relationship or like attract a man in those circumstances. Hopefully not. We won't even get into the necrophilia, but
yeah, let's not. Go seek help.
Yeah, please. But I think all the things that you said in regards to like how you can create in a man the circumstance of he won't even be focused on that.
Yeah.
Was all really good things that you said. And I think though, the thing I wanted to add is that what also deepens your and my connection, I should say, is that we put into practice a lot of the things that we sit here and talk about week after week. And, you know, if you're new here and this is your first episode, you should go back and watch a lot of them, because yes, you can create a good relationship out of maybe something that's not so good.
Right.
But the key really is to not just settle down with a man that's high value. You need to settle down with a man that you value, you respect, you look up to, you trust.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter how much money that man has or how much status that man has. if you don't trust him, if you wouldn't follow his lead, if you don't respect him.
Right. Exactly.
Even if there are things that really bother you about him, and even if they're little things, it's going to be harder for you to have the sort of connection that we're talking about. And it's going to be harder for you to treat him like a king or like someone that you really value when there are all these things that are kind of counteracting that. So I think it's important that as a woman and a young woman that you really take the time to vet somebody. You have those standards like we were talking about, because the safest way to ensure that you marry someone that is going to treat you well is by having the standards. And having boundaries and not allowing a man to yell at you, or, you know, a lot of the things that we talk about men not allowing women to do, treat you like in an aggressive way or degrade you in some way, or all these things. Like, having the standards will prevent you from being in that situation. I'm not saying that it's always foolproof, because that would be foolish to say. There's definitely people, men or women, who trick people into thinking they're one person, and they can do it for a long time. And then, you know, they end up being someone else, or, you know, something happens and they flipped a switch, kind of Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that like it's foolproof, but when you have really good standards, and again, you should be creating and kind of refining those standards every date you go on, so that by the time you know what you want and you're set in that, you're not going to accept anything less. You should not be settling. You should not be in a relationship or marrying men solely for their status, just like guys aren't going to marry a woman solely for how they look. And if they do, then it's very superficial. Again, if you marry a man for that, you can't expect true love unless there's all these other things there. The substance is there for him as well. So I think it's really important for women to realize that, you know, if you don't respect the man before you marry him, or you don't trust him, then you either need to resolve those issues before you get married, or don't marry that man.
And you're probably, women cannot make kings. You're not going to make a king out of a man. You have to attract a king. And so it's like, if I could draw this, I wish I could draw it, but it's like a funnel.
Has paper.
Well, I mean, everyone could see it. You know, I could draw it myself, but so it's like young and hot is going to attract a wide range of men, right? Having the qualities of being feminine of your character is going to attract the kings out of that. And then the third step is keeping the king. Right. So it's like, as a woman, you can't be like, oh, I'm going to make the man into what I want him to be. So your widest net is when you're younger and hot, like being young and hot. Let's just be honest. Like, that's your widest net. So you got a lot more to work with. And then you're filtering it down by your standards, by having high standards. That's what attracts the king, and gets him to actually want to get into a relationship with you. But you can't try and make the king. You got to attract the king. He's already got to be that kind of man to a degree, at least.
He does.
And then to keep him in the long term, that's where it comes into the things like we talked about, reading like the Surrendered Wife or Empowered Wife, whichever, you know, and really focusing on how do you show up in the relationship, in the marriage, and constantly working. A lot of women don't really work on the marriage. A lot of men don't either, but I would say that it's weird is that there's more focus on therapy and stuff for men need to start working on the marriage. But women don't tend to work on the marriage. It's trying to be feminine, trying to be a good wife, right? That's fairly rare today, I would say. But if you are that, then you're going to keep that guy. And so,
and it's easier to do all the things to keep a man, or at least like learn the things, because I do genuinely believe that women are confused at what men really want, because we think they want the romance. And I'm not saying they don't at all, that we want as in these like acts or gifts or, you know, certain things. Like men don't want flowers. They don't want, you know, even bringing him a nice thing that reminds you of him. I'm not saying he doesn't want that.
Right.
But like you said, he wants to be desired. He wants respect. He wants your trust in his leadership and things like that. And women genuinely don't know these things because there's not a lot of resources on these things either.
Yeah.
And I think also some of the reason that women don't work on the marriage or things like that is because that men are just perpetuating, well, be young and hot and have sex or, you know, like that. There is something to say that is also causing women to not have substance in these other areas. Is because if you tell women it's all superficial, which again is why we did this whole episode, this dual episode.
Yeah, that's the wide net, but then you get,
But that's not, but men don't go in, they're not telling the secrets like you're telling. They don't go into that. They're just like, men want hot young women.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. But like, there has to be the substance there. There has to be the, you know, like you can't just be young and hot or be a woman or be just like, okay, well, we're married. So, because men do this too. We're married now. So I can just stop doing all the things I did before. Men stop doing the romance. Women stop like, you know, putting on the lingerie or whatever. And the thing is though, that I feel like when you have a relationship like us though, and I'm not saying that we're perfect either. There's been plenty of times where I've not been, you know, figuring out how to give you the romance that you need. And again, like that's my responsibility. But that's how I also know that women, they're not being told these things.
They're not being told. Yeah, it's true.
But I think though, when you're in a relationship where you respect the man and you value him at such a high degree, and you know, again, that he can't be replaced, just like a man has to know that you can't be replaced as a woman.
Yeah.
Then you will, like, it'll be so easy to treat him like a king because you know the value.
Exactly.
And so you don't want to treat him any less.
Right.
But that's why these young women need to know, like, this isn't a PSA to settle down with the first guy that seems like he's good or the first, like, high value man you come across. Like, you still have to have standards. Like you said, you still have to vet the man.
Right.
And you should end up with a man that you truly value and respect and look up to, because then it's easy to treat him like a king, and it's easy not to yell at him or call him names or whatever, because you have such a high respect for him that those don't even cross your mind. I'm not saying you won't have problems and you won't have to work those things out.
Yeah.
But it will be easier for you if from the beginning you already have those things. And I'm not saying that the people who are dealing with problems don't have those things, but it is probably the case that you lost respect for him somewhere along the way, which decreased his value in your eyes. And so you're treating him more like the pauper than the king.
Exactly. Yeah. And I can tell you from my own experience in life, you know, because I had left my first marriage, right? We talked about this in the other episode, but it had nothing to do with her getting older or looks. It didn't. It had to do with how I was being treated. For me, that's what, you know, and in doing how I did things was not right. I would never condone what I did, you know, how I did things, but still, I can tell you, you know, honestly, that was not the factor. It was not. And then also on the flip side, when I met you, I was at a point where I was at my peak in the sense that I was, you know, I was dating a lot of young women, a lot of young, beautiful women. But what stood out about you, besides you being young and beautiful, is that, you know,
well, I was 28.
Yeah. I was dating women that were younger, right?
Which is not old.
No, it's not old.
Some
but
men
I'm just
would
saying, it's
say
like
old.
Yeah.
But I'm just putting out there that I was 28, which some men would call old.
Right. Some men would call
because
old.
I want
right.
people, you know, also
yeah.
segue into the older women.
Right, exactly.
That isn't the end of the world.
Right. So there was plenty of women that if I wanted to have a long-term relationship with them, I certainly could have, right? And even one that I sort of was. Again, that was wrong. You know, but I'm just speaking the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but what stood out about you was your character, was the feminine core that you had, and how you showed up, and how I remember just how delighted you were to show me the pictures on your phone, and I was like, she's so sweet, and I remember that, and that just, you know, it warmed my heart. I was like, wow, I can see sitting in bed, you know, looking at pictures on the phone, you know, like I could see that, you know.
And now here we are.
but it impacted me. It wasn't just young and hot, right? I mean, that was an element of it. I mean, you are, you know, for sure. But that's important. You know what I mean? To realize that was, it wasn't that I didn't have, like, had no plans of settling down.
Right. But that's why you can change a man's mind.
Yeah.
Who maybe is kind of stuck in the, well, no, why do I need to settle down with one person when I can just be with all the hot women or whatever, you know, like, but that's why the standards and the substance and, you know, the things that make you unique matter a lot. Like, I would say more than the looks. I understand that men, they're going to go for looks.
Right.
But I also understand that if you're somebody that makes an impact on people, it doesn't matter how you look.
Yeah, it's more important in the sense that, like, it is still relevant to think about as a woman that obviously there's a time where, as you're younger, you're going to be at kind of the peak opportunity, and that will fade down over time. But it also isn't to say that no matter, because, hey, sometimes you're just dealt the hand you're dealt with. You could be young and still not be as attractive as women who are older or whatever, or your peers, right? But that doesn't mean that a man's not going to pick you, because, look, there's a sufficient level of attraction that needs to be there, that the guy needs to find you sufficiently level of attractive where you're in the game. But if you're in the game and your character is much higher quality than other women that may be more attractive than you, the guy is going to pick, the quality man is going to pick you. That's true. I can 100% attest to that, because I have seen it happen, and I have coached a lot of guys, and I have helped a lot of guys become very successful with women. And after they've become successful with women, they have told me two things. One is that I don't want to keep on living this life. I want to find someone that I can just be with. And they've had the hot women. That's not their top priority anymore. Now they're like, yeah, she needs to be hot enough that I'm attracted to her, but I'm looking for other qualities. And so that's the truth of it. So you're right on.
Well, and if being hot enough was enough, then they wouldn't be over that. Like, if just being young and hot was enough and sleeping with women was enough, you'd still be doing it.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is that women, you know, and especially to segue into the women that are past the wall, which I'm one of those women, according to like the technical age that a lot of people say, you know, like, even though John is right that your window of highest opportunity might have passed.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're going to be old and alone or whatever, like, angry men on the internet want to try to tell you.
Right.
Because, like I said, if you make an impact on people in a good way and you have a good character and good standards, you can be happier than a lot of people who, you know, got married and might have like a successful husband, but they're living this lonely, miserable life. Like, that doesn't justify that you can't still have the relationship that you want in a relationship like you and I have. Because earlier when I was getting ready, I mean, this was going to be our other episode that we were going to do. I'm not going to go like full blown into it, but, you know, the belief that I always had that was solid was that I'm not going to get married unless I have the relationship that I wanted. And I know that it was a really high bar to have.
Yeah.
It was really high. And my parents are still together, but they don't have the romantic, loving relationship like you and I have. So I didn't have like them to look up to, but I was like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Like, I want this.
Right.
If I'm getting married, I want this sort of relationship.
Yeah.
And it's the relationship that you and I have. Actually, the relationship that you and I have is far beyond even the one that I had in my mind. But people used to tell me, maybe you should lower your standards, or, maybe you should, like, that's kind of like a fairy tale or a rom-com or whatever. Like, that's not going to happen in real life. But I never believed them.
Right. Yeah.
And I would have genuinely waited till I was 50, 60 years old if I had to for a love like you and I have to come around. And I mean that because
I believe
I'd rather have been on my own and not settled.
Yeah.
Even for the love. It didn't even really matter about the man. It mattered about the love, which is also a key for both the younger women and older women to have, is that have less standards on what the man looks like, or even his job or things like that, or his status or whatever, and have more standards on the love that you want to have, the relationship you want to have.
Right.
Because that's the standards I really had.
Right.
And even if you and I lost everything and we had to be in a box right now, I'd still be happy because it's the love that you and I have.
Right.
And so it's not the end of the world if you're past the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what women who are over 27, is that like that's so young.
It depends.
Let's say 30.
I think
like
30
27 sounds so young to me.
I feel like 30 is but it again,
but
it's not a hard and fast thing. Some people are, it's just, and also if you party a lot and do a lot of drugs, then it's going to come quicker. Even with some guys, some rock stars, you're like, damn, this guy's only like, 30. He looks like he's 60.
Well, now they're all really old, but
but I'm talking about that. But the point is, it doesn't matter where exactly that is. You just have to understand that there's some point where things are going to drop off more dramatically, right?
But I'm just saying,
but it's not the end of the world. It's really not, because the thing is, but there are some expectations that are expected of you as a woman that is an older woman, right? At this point, you better have your shit figured out. Right? Like,
what is that? Like who you are?
You better have some kind of spiritual and emotional development. Like, you've had a lot of time. If you bring in a ton of baggage, right, that you haven't worked your own shit out and done your own self-work, it's not good.
Well, I feel like any older person, older than 35.
Yeah.
Maybe even 30, to be honest, in this day and age. If someone is very set in their ways, aka like not having a growth mindset or wanting to better themselves, they're not changing.
And
they're not changing. Like, it would take a miracle for them to change, because the older people get, the more set in their ways they get.
Yeah.
And so if you're, like you said, like the baggage and like, if you're not emotionally intelligent or like at the level where you should be by the age that you are, that is going to be a huge red flag for anyone, like man or woman, like, that is a huge red flag, because it's probably not changing. I'm not saying it can't at all.
Right.
But the older people get, the more stuck in their ways they are, because they've already been doing this for however many years. And so, I agree. I just wanted to add in there because that is a huge thing.
Well, and a lot of the guys I coach, the complaint that they have about women that are older is that they're carrying a lot of baggage. They got a lot of shit that unpack. Sometimes even on the first date, they're unpacking all this stuff. And it's like, I get it. You had a hard life. Like, you probably went through a divorce or whatever. Mm-hmm. You got to deal with that stuff. You can't just keep on bringing it forward. Like, you got to take the time and actually like deal with that so that you can be, have that growth mindset and radiate that feminine energy. You can't be bitter and I hate men and all this stuff, right? And you definitely better not be feminist at that point if you're thinking you're going to attract a guy, like a quality guy, because he's not going to tolerate it, right? So, I mean, this is the truth of it. Again, it doesn't mean that you can't, do what you want to do and live your life, but the man hating at that stage, it could be tolerated in the 20s is definitely not going to be tolerated in the 30s and 40s. It's just
I
not.
mean, you can't hate men and expect to get a man.
No,
just like
no,
men
but-
can't hate women and expect to get a woman.
Yeah. I'm just saying that at that age, it's not going to be tolerated at all by a guy. And and I would say, obviously you can't just dwell on the past. But I think the thing that's important to understand is just to not be in denial of it, because there's a lot of women that are older and they really do a number on younger women by telling them, oh, you don't have to worry. You got plenty of time. It doesn't matter. In your 30s or 40s, you'll be just as attractive, maybe even more so. When you say that, you're like, you're poisoning people. That's not good. And you're poisoning yourself, because that's not the reality. And again, you have to just accept the reality, but it's okay. It's not a bad reality. It's the truth of it. But if you won't accept that yourself, here's what's going to happen is you're going to think that that's true. You're going to kid yourself into doing that. And then you're going to act like that's true. And so you're going to start to pretend that way that your value is higher than what it is. And when you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to alienate yourself from the guys that actually would be good relationships for you. So that's why I'm saying is because you're going to discard those guys, and that's not that's not a good plan.
Yeah. Something that you said was, older women telling younger women that, oh, well, you'll be hot in your 30s or 40s, maybe even hotter. And that could be true in some ways. Like you said, like some people are late bloomers, but I think what's better for women, older women, to tell the girls in their 20s is that you have the highest opportunity right now,
right?
Being 20.
Right.
So figure out what you want and go after that and settle down if you find that.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, just like you were like, well, we can't put an age on the wall,
right?
Even though people try to do that, you can't really say that people might not be more attractive. Like, yes, in general,
you can.
Well, in general, it is a difference, but some people do blossom later. I'm not saying they're going to be the hottest that they've been at 40,
right?
But it's also a little bit different now where, if you take care of yourself and do all these things, you're not dropping off the freaking Mariana Trench
but
when you hit 35.
Yeah, but that's with plastic surgery and all of those things, right? So again, maybe there's the rare exception where you should just count on it. You know what I'm saying? It's like you shouldn't count on winning the lottery, right? Maybe you win the lottery. Hey, if you do, good. But don't count on it. That's all I'm saying is... It's in general, even men, right? Like men have a little bit of an advantage because it's their physical, like the way that women are attracted to men is more of an encompassing thing of the man and how he carries himself and the status and all these other things. There's obviously the physical attribute to it too, but even men as they get older, past a certain point, they're not going to be as attractive, right? That's just how it is. Like you get old, you get wrinkled. Like everyone suffers the same fate. It's just that because women's value on their sexual marketplace, value is more based on the beauty and the youth, that it affects them more. That's the truth of it.
But also at the same time, everybody knows that those things fade.
You're right.
And so the reason that I feel like women don't focus as much as men do, even though women do know to some extent, or now they'll know after watching this, that men value that, is that it's not permanent.
Right, exactly.
And I think that especially older women they get to a point too where they're like, if you don't like me for who I am, then it's not going to matter anyway, because they know that they're not 20.
Right.
They know that they're not in the same playing field in a lot of ways as the younger women are. But also at the same time, they don't want shallow relationships a lot of the time. I feel like the only older women who want shallow relationships are ones who didn't interact with shallow relationships in their 20s. They were either married or, in a long-term relationship that ended up breaking up, like, but took up maybe 10 years of their life.
Right.
So most older women have a better understanding of what they want. It is harder for them to find it because they don't have the initial attraction of being 20 years old.
Yeah.
But they also are less likely to settle for, you know, a superficial relationship.
Yeah.
As far as like them having to worry about being hot all the time. Whereas like a 20-year-old might interact in a relationship like that where they're like, oh, well, I have to wear makeup to the grocery store. Like a lot of women that are older, they're like, I'm not putting on makeup to go to the grocery store. Like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't like be presentable if they're like going out on a date, but it's a different, they're in a different mindset a lot of the times. And I'm not saying that these women are like, I don't care about being attracted to men.
Right.
But they also are smart enough at that point, usually, to know that they can't control the age attraction.
There are a lot of them that aren't, though. There's a lot of them that are in denial.
Of being their age?
Yeah. And that are more so on the makeup all the time. And right, because
well, you're right. There are some. But
again,
I feel like most women, though, that have done a lot of the work and they have the standards and things like that, then they're not a part of that.
And there's
group.
also the whole like, I like you either like me or you don't. But then it's like, but do you even like you? Like, you know, have you done the work? If you've done the work, then you should absolutely have that attitude. But if you haven't done the work, then you should. Just like when we give guys the advice of be yourself. Such bad advice, because yourself is a little pussy right now. Like, you need to grow up and be a man and then be yourself. Like, grow into the actual man that you are and be that man. Don't just be yourself like where you are. Like, I just jerk off and play video games and that's myself.
Right.
That's honest, but it's not your capable self. You know, that's not what's in there. There's a lion somewhere in there. You got to find it and bring it out and become that, right? So, I agree. But I think one of the things that I wanted to say also is kind of the message to women that are older too, and because I see this a lot, is that women that are already married right now that are older, fix your marriage, because you think, because, and this is actually maybe the worst lie that a lot of women tell each other, is that, you can just get a divorce and then find another man.
They say that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why?
I don't know why. It's pretty delusional, but it's not going to be easy, especially if you have kids in tow. And so rather than trying to be like, I'm going to just find another man, try to fix the relationship that you're in. Try to work and become that, read the books that we said and do that, because that's a much better road than being single at 40 or whatever it is. You know what I mean? I mean, if you are, you are, but it's not going to be as easy as some women are telling other women that it is.
Well, here's a PSA to women who are in this boat, these older women. As a 20-year-old, dating sucked.
Yeah.
There is no world where I would want to be 40 having to date. Right. I've already told you that if you and I don't work out, which isn't going to happen, but I'm going to go live in a little cottage and have dogs. That's it. I'll be happy. Like in that. But, I would not want to date with, like you said, because you are going to have baggage. Like there are going to be unavoidable baggage. Like if you have kids. Right. Or, if you have gone through a lot of stuff in life. And yes, you need to work on those things and you need to go to therapy. If you need therapy, you need to watch those podcasts. If you need to watch this podcast, you need to figure out, you need to watch other podcasts on, emotional intelligence and healing yourself and growth mindset or whatever it is you need. Right. Like, you should be doing those things.
Right.
But, I would not want to date as a 40-year-old because you're already going to have those, or even anyone, even 35.
Right.
Because it's not super enjoyable as a 20-year-old. Because and the part that's not enjoyable, because again, I'm not trying to like contradict what I said in the other one. Like, you should make dating a fun experience and a learning experience. But it's not fun as a woman to invest in men who aren't investing back in you.
Right. Yeah.
Or, get your hopes up about a guy you really like, but he didn't like you back.
Right.
And if you're older,
Yeah.
and some of those guys might be able to get some of the younger girls. And so you're dealing with people your age and younger girls.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're 20, there might still be older women that are, dating the same people you're dating. But like you said, you have a higher advantage just because of biology, just because of how you look, just because of the superficial.
Yeah.
So any woman that thinks they can just leave their husband and find someone else doesn't really know what the dating scene is like. And to be honest, just the dating scene in 2025 seems like even more of a nightmare than when I dated when I was in my 20s.
Right, exactly.
So, I'm not saying don't leave the situation you're in as an older woman if you're being abused
of course.
or if you're being cheated on and you want to leave.
Yeah.
Obviously, those things are valid.
Right.
But like you said, the better thing to do is to try to, if you are married, talking to these women, instead of being like, I'll just go find a new one, try to fix your relationship if you're not in one of those situations where you should leave. Get the respect back for your husband.
Yep.
And your relationship can be even better than when you first got married or when you first started dating.
Yeah.
And that's way better to rekindle and even enhance the situation, the relationship that you were in already, than trying to go find an even smaller needle in a haystack. I would say a grain of sand in a haystack.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And read the books that we said, watch our episode on the surrendered wife or the empowered wife. Read those books. It will help. And obviously watch the podcast, and because that we're just focused on helping you build a better relationship.
Right.
And we talk to both men and women, and we equally slap y'all around. If you're upset if you're a woman upset at us today, don't worry. Next episode, the men will be upset. So because we're speaking the truth as best as we can. So,
and no one here is saying that value your values and your looks.
No, it's not. It's not true.
If anything, we're saying the opposite. You have to have value as yourself as a person.
Right.
Over anything else.
But you have to be grounded in reality. That's all we're trying to say, is that you have to realize how the world works and understand that, right? And so that's the thing about it, because some people aren't grounded in reality. They just don't think that. They think that what their ideals are is what people should conform to and what the world is, and that's not the case. And so, but I don't think it's hopeless at all. In fact, I think that you have the opportunity as an older woman to be a much more feminine, mature woman who radiates feminine energy that is attractive in its own right, that can outshine even younger women in that way.
Because you have the wisdom and the knowledge, that they don't necessarily have. And I wanted to say that if you're a woman too, in this sort of half of who we're talking about, that instead of focusing on the plastic surgery or trying to look like you're in your 20s still, focus on developing yourself as a person. Just like I told the 20-year-olds, the thing that will make you stand out the most and have the most impact, even on dates and your future partner, is who you are as a person.
Right.
So instead of being like, I'm going to go get this plastic surgery, be like, I'm going to go work on not allowing things to anger me or cause a reaction out of me, or, work on, instead of being so aggressive and in control, I'm going to learn to soften and not stress about it and be more at peace, and, maybe pick up a hobby that gives me more serenity in my life. Focus on those things and who you are and how that isn't replaceable. Because again, the thing is that, and I tell you this all the time, you'll never find another me. Yeah. And I have my faults. I'm not saying that in a cocky way where I'm so amazing. You'll never find another me.
Right.
I'm saying that in a way that you could find somebody that maybe treats you similar, like the actions that I do potentially, but they will never have the quirks and the special things that make me me.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So that's why it has to be a mixture of your standards and like how you treat people mixed with the unique things about you. And even if they're like things that aren't like the best or whatever, you can still, those things can still be endearing if they're done in the right way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I get what you're saying.
Like the uniqueness of it.
Right. Well, because those traits become endearing based on how you show up in the relationship.
Well, and how you treat people.
Yeah, exactly. Because the same thing that could be annoying could be endearing. It just depends on how the perception is based on how you're showing up in the relationship. So, but I think that, you know, if you're the kind of woman that is focused on learning these things and learning, I mean, what guy, you know, would not want to date a woman who is older, but understands how to actually be like put in the work and be really good in the relationship and take care of a man and treat him like a king and, you know, and elevate him to a higher spiritual level and to, you know, and to be empathetic towards him and understand, you know, and to be that kind of support that he needs to be out there and facing the world, right? So it's like, you know, as a man, right? I can say that most men, that if you're a high quality man, you understand these things. If you marry a young woman, you're going to have to teach her these things. Like, it's not just something that women are taught, and so you're going to have to work through those things with her. And so it's going to be a lot of effort and work to get to that point, to lead the relationship to where it needs to go. But if you have a woman that already understands these things, that's already that far along,
or sees the value already.
There's a huge value in that. So maybe you don't want to do all that work. Maybe you don't want to get that 22-year-old girl that you're going to have to do so much work to lead her in the right direction and whatnot. And, you know, so I'm just saying, like, there is an appeal to it. But as an older woman, you can't just be like, I think the mistake that a lot of older women are like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. Looks don't matter. It's like I can look just as good as a younger woman. And so when they have that mindset, the downfall of that mindset is that then they don't think that they have to show up. They can just show up however they want. And if you realize that you're competing with younger women and that is a high bar for attracting a man's attention that you're competing with, then you understand that you got to be showing up with something much that overcompensates for that, right? Like I said, if you're a woman that already understands these things, you've been watching this podcast, like you understand, like, hey, if I'm in a relationship with you, I'm going to be feminine. I'm going to treat you right. I've worked on all these things. That, you know, that moves the balance where it's like, yeah, these ditzy young women, not for me. I don't like that. I want a mature woman that gets it, right? But if you're a mature woman and you don't get it, don't kid yourself. Like, how are you going to compete?
Right. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Are there any other sections? I feel like we did quite a few sections for the younger girls, but
there's not. I mean, there's just not as much because prevention is the best cure, right? So, you know, younger girls need more of the message because they have more control over their future than someone who's older does. So I think that's why we talked more.
It just sounds so like hopeless. I know it's not. And I know we're trying to give them information to help them.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to undermine the things that you're saying, but as a woman, who you are shines brighter than any way you look. Yeah. Like a man has to be attracted to you, yes, but who you are and how you treat him. Because if you're a kind, good person, you're going to treat people well, usually. They correlate. Like,
exactly.
It's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
So if a man, when he interacts with you, can sense these things about you and knows how genuine you are and authentic
Right.
and kind,
Right.
he's going to choose that over something that just looks shiny and brand new.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't,
Right.
that's also not a man that you want to be with, because let's look.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Okay.
Like, some men want a shiny new Ferrari.
Right.
And maybe all men kind of want a shiny new Ferrari.
Right.
But there's also some men that like vintage cars.
Yeah. but they're restored vintage cars. That's
Not
the thing.
always.
I mean, yeah, they restore
But
them.
the restoring
Right.
of a vintage car
Right. Yeah.
still doesn't look like a Ferrari.
No,
It's not modernized like a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And the way that you restore a vintage car is a lot of times what's on the outside rather than the inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the inside rather than the outside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
The opposite.
Yeah.
So what I'm just trying to say is that the things that you cultivate inside of you as a woman that can't give a man the shiny newness that she was at one point is insanely valuable to the right man. Because also, like if I was single in my 40s or even late 30s, I don't want a man where I have to compete with 20-year-olds, because I'm not in that competition. Like, I'm not a soccer player going to a basketball game. Like,
I see what you're saying.
I'm not doing
makes
that.
sense. Yeah.
So I want a man that values what I'm bringing to the table, which is being
I was trying not to use those words, and then you used them. I was like, the value you bring. Like, I was like dancing all around it, and then you said it.
I know. But you know what I mean? I don't mean it in the way that we're talking about, but bringing to the relationship.
Yeah.
I want someone that values that, especially because I can't compete in that. I'm not going to win a basketball game if I'm a soccer player.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that's too similar to what you're saying as far as, don't have the same standards that you had at 20. Don't think that you can compete in the basketball game the way that you used to.
Right.
I'm not saying you can't even be in the basketball game, but don't think that, like, if you're over here playing soccer now, that you have to compete in the basketball game when you're playing soccer.
Right. Well,
like, and in my mind, I feel like as women, maybe this is different for men, because maybe men's tastes don't really change. Right. You've kind of mentioned that. But I feel like as a woman, the older you get, your tastes do change. Yeah,
and that is true. Actually, there's some statistics there's charts from dating apps from a bunch of compiled data showing that men, as they age, their preference for the age of a woman stays pretty much exactly the same as at the 20s. Like, and women, as they age, their preference for the age of a man when they're in their 20s is actually more preference to 20s. But as they start to get into their 30s, then it starts to jump to like 40. And it kind of stays a little bit higher than their own age until they hit about 50 or 60. And then it actually drops lower than their age, because everyone doesn't, everyone would prefer someone that's less wrinkly, I guess. That's, but
wow.
I mean, but the point is, like, I think you're making a good point, which is that we tell the same thing. And I've told guys the same thing. It's like you would tell a guy the same thing. You'd be like, look, dude, you're short. Okay. You don't have like a lot of money. You don't have a lot of status. Let's not just hit on only the 10s. Like, I'm not saying you can't have an attractive woman, but you're not going to get a 10. Like, let's be real, right? Like, I've had to have this conversation with a guy. It's just not going to happen. I mean, yeah, maybe you can like up everything and get to the point where you could, but hey, just a woman that's attractive to you, talk to her. Like, you don't have to be like, she has to be the hottest woman I've ever seen in anyone's ever seen, right? We would give the same advice to a guy, and it's not because we're trying to be mean. It's just you got to be realistic about it. But where you're right, absolutely right, is if you're going to compromise your standards, compromise them on maybe the looks or maybe the status. But don't compromise them on the character and the values.
No, you should still be striving for the love standard that you set.
That's the one that you don't compromise on.
Right.
Right. And because all those other things are either going to fade over time or they can be taken away or lost,
Right.
right? Because even status, hey, how many people got bankrupt or, get that happens, right? Stuff happens. Your house burns down. You didn't get insurance. You're in,
Don't say that with all the fires
in
around
the
here.
Palisades or whatever, but that's exactly the right way to look at it. Is it's not trying to be, oh, you're too old now. And it's like, no. It's just, okay, be realistic about, you can still find love and you can still find a great man and have a great relationship. You're just not going to be going after the same guys that your 20-year-old self would go after.
Yeah, you should be focusing on the love standard, especially if you're an older woman, than the status and the power or whatever you want to call it that younger women are also attracted to, that women are attracted to.
Yeah.
Because, again, that is the thing that is going to cause you to have the relationship that you really want. And that's what everybody's focus should be. Like, it shouldn't be superficial. It should be, I want to be in a happy, loving relationship. And I'm not getting married. Or, maybe too, a lot of times, some women, when they get older, they don't even want to get married again, which I get that too.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't even enter a relationship as boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever you want to call it as you get older, unless they match the love standards that you've set. Because, again, if I was in that boat, I would rather just be alone. Because I know that no one can meet the standards that you and I have met.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, that's why for me, it's just no. But the thing is, a lot of people, they didn't get those love standards met at a younger age. Because like you said, they're either divorced or, some women have been trying to find it, but they're not really doing it in the best way. So they've been single for a long time. Like, a lot of women, unfortunately, have been single for a longer time than we've typically seen before. But also at the same time, I'd rather see women staying single and finding love later than in life than just settling for some guy that she doesn't even really like. So then she's definitely not going to respect him or trust him or those things, and then ends up either miserable for the rest of her life or divorced, and then, kind of creating the same patterns over and over again. So it's still important as a woman who's in her 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, who's dating, to have that love standard. It's important for everyone to have. And definitely any woman, regardless of if you're 20 or 60. And even now, we're teaching our daughter how to have standards in relationships, because she's getting to that age, where she's getting more interested in boys and they're doing things wrong. And, she'll even sometimes be like, well, I don't want a man or guy who does this. And I'm like, good for you. Because that's, you've said a bunch of times on here, I'm pretty sure, that you train people how to, you teach people how to...
You train people how to treat you. Yeah.
Train people how to treat you. And so the sooner that you learn how to have standards and good standards, the easier it'll be to find the love that you want.
Yeah.
And you should be accumulating those every date you go on, every interaction with the member of the opposite sex or whoever you're interested in, because it doesn't even have to be heterosexual relationships. But you should constantly be learning the things that you want or you don't want. And, really striving for the love that you give out and that you want. And the thing is too, one last thing is that you have to give out the love that you want back.
Exactly.
You can never expect someone to love you this insane amount when you're not giving that out, or when you don't even love yourself that much. So, and by having standards, that also shows yourself how much love you have for yourself. You're like, I'm not going to waste your time, or I'm not going to allow you to be in a relationship that's not going to serve you or give you the love that you give to other people. And again, things might go awry, and I'm not saying that any of this is really foolproof, but you have a way higher percentage of success when you operate this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the thing I think that guys, would say, or that they complain about women's and their standards, is because it's not the love standard. It's that a lot of women, especially women that are past their prime, they would still have the same standards, a very high standard. And even women in general sometimes have a high standards on a man, on the looks, on the status, and they're missing out on the love standard for that. And what happens, especially it happens with women that are older, is that they're just going to get played. Because they're going to, if they go after those guys are going to sleep with them, sure. And then that's it, right? And, and I'm not proud to say that there was a time where I was like, oh, let me just change my range to like 30 to 40 on my app back in the day. And I thought, okay, this is like shooting fish from a barrel because it's a lot easier. Right. And that's what guys are thinking. I don't shoot the messenger, but I'm just telling you, like, that's what guys are thinking. They're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, this will be easier. And it is. And that's because if women are still holding those very high standards of status and looks for men and not having the love standard, like you said, then they're kidding themselves because that's the problem. But men have the same issue with the standards thing, but women generally tend to have higher standards that are superficial standards in terms of those things, and that kind of hurts them.
Yeah, I mean, you can have things that you want because that's part of, like, not to get too woo-woo, but the manifestation of it, right? Yeah. The thing is that you can be like, oh, I'm really attracted to a tall man who has big muscles.
Sure.
And looks like John Bernthal. Like, you can like think those things, like, and be like, I'm attracted to this type of man.
He looks like me, but
but the way to get those things properly is to focus more on the love standard. Right. And I say that because if you focus on just the physical things, you might get those potentially, but you won't have the love part. Yeah. And the real core is the love part, because just like we're sitting here talking about women, we're all going to get older, and men could lose their status at any point. Right. The only thing that you keep is your character and who you are and the love that you share.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that should be the main focus. I'm not saying you can't be like, oh, I'm attracted to this type of guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you shouldn't be focusing on those things. You should acknowledge those.
Right.
But you should be focusing on the love standard, because that is the only consistent thing that is going to be there through the test of time, through aging, through highs and lows. That is what it is. And in order to get potentially some of the things, and the thing is, when you get the love that you want, these things don't even really matter if you don't get them. But a lot of times you still get them. Like when you and I got together, I know so many of my friends who like really knew me were like, oh, this guy's 1,000% Nicole's type. Yeah. And I wasn't looking for that. Like, that wasn't my main focus. Like, maybe initially because we met on a dating app, I'm like, oh, I messaged you and I was like, your face looks nice. But the second that I met you and the interaction that we had, you were ticking off all of these love standards that I had. And you embodied the man that I could see myself with long term. Yeah. So these things, like, were just a bonus. Yeah. Yeah. At that point. But I was fully expecting you to just ignore me after I even sent you that message. But I'm just saying that I don't want to sit here and tell women they can't find certain things attractive. Yeah. But you can't focus on those things. Exactly. Like, that can't be your standard of dating. The love standard has to be your standard of dating.
I think I see your New York Times bestseller book. It's called The Love Standard. That's like a perfect name for a book. You could write that book.
Don't steal it. Well, no.
The Love Standard. Right?
I mean, that's true.
I think that would fly off the shelves.
So you're like telling me I need to write a book?
Yeah. Called The Love Standard.
We're just all going to be writing a book in our household.
Exactly. Yeah. I've already done mine, so you guys got to catch up now. So.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, no, this is good. This is good. I think, I think we're going to get a little bit of a hate from it, but hopefully
I'm
the right
a woman.
people.
I'm past the wall. And I guess maybe that's too why I don't feel like we're being negative. We're trying to help.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've sat here on both episodes saying it's hard to hear this as a woman. It's hard for me to sit here and hear it. It's hard to hear it from my husband and not, and I even told you that the other day when we were talking about it. Like, how, knowing that you're saying this to my face, am I going to feel secure in our relationship? Like, even though I do, but at the same time, it's like, those words are definitely knocking on the door, trying to get in.
Yeah.
And, you know, luckily I have an amazing husband, and you explained it, you know, in the way that you did in the last episode. But I guess that's why I'm not that concerned, because I know it's hard to hear. Yeah. And I know that a lot of women already know this, but that's also why I wanted us to do this episode, is because it's not hopeless. And a lot of younger women and older women are focusing on the wrong things. Yeah. And I've never really heard anybody fully dive into it. And again, we're going to post clips and people are going to take it out of context. And that's probably when they'll be mad. Yeah. But if they watch the whole episode, I feel like they will understand where we're coming from.
And I feel like it's almost, you know, how some people will take a word and they'll take away the power, the negative power from the word by it's like there's a lot of guys out there that are creating a very negative image of the wall and like in this whole thing. And so it's like taking the power back, right? To say, okay, yeah, there's truth in the thing, but it's not being handled in a very kind way, you know, that's beneficial to anyone. And so we're not going to deny the truth, because there's some people that are out there denying the truth. And they're getting, everyone's like, yeah. But they're not doing anyone any help, because they're just blowing smoke up your ass, right? So I think it's important, because, you know, it's not uncomfortable to make the episode knowing that, like, you have to watch every word you're going to say, because, you know, but it's necessary because it's the truth. And it doesn't have to be presented in a mean and harsh way. Instead, it can be used as an educational way to understand what should you do because of this truth, right?
What's the best way to handle these things?
So we did good, I think. Whoa. So
you seem a little nervous, but I'm like,
no, I mean, I'm not
the
nervous.
Wall too. Yeah, I mean, granted, I'm married, but at the same time, I was technically past the wall. Yeah, when you and I met. If you're going by the 27 that some guys say. So like the whole point is to not shun women or force young women to get married quickly, or tell older women they don't provide anything and they're lesser than these women. That's not what we're saying. No. And if you think that's what we're saying, then I don't know any other way for someone to deliver what we're delivering to you properly. And because also in my mind, I know that you're still like, you know, these are the truths, and they are. Right. But I don't think women in their 30s, 40s, whatever, should be viewing this as negative. Because like I said, it's not. It's just, you don't want the men that are hunting down 20-year-olds. You don't want them. You want a man who's in his masculine, if you're a feminine woman, or, you know, you've worked on yourself, and you want a man that's worked on his self. Yeah. Like, you want that love. Like at that point, the looks don't even really matter to you guys as much anymore. Like, I know I'm already there. Right. Like, I'm not, this isn't, like, it's not about looks like it is when you're younger. When you enter into your 30s and 40s, it's about who you are as a person. It's about developing that part of you. It's about gardening. It's about things that meet the substance. Like, you really get into the substance of who you are and why we're here, and like, you know, love, like what love really is. Like when you're in your 20s, you don't know what that is, and you're figuring it out, and you're figuring it out the hard way, and it's messy. And like, that's what I'm saying. Like, these women who want to date, like, who are married in their 40s and stuff, and they're like, oh, just go find another one. No. You must not have been dating in your 20s. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, you're being led astray. Yeah. If anything, if you're intentional with who you are and your growth in life and what you want in love, you will get there. Yeah. And it might be hard, because dating in general is hard just right now and like in society. But I think we're hopefully working on that. Yeah. Well, as a whole.
Trying in this podcast.
That's right.
It is funny though. I was just thinking about, as you're saying that, how it's like if someone says, "Oh, you're so beautiful," it's like such a compliment. It's like, "Oh yeah, I picked great parents. I picked them," or like
Yeah.
I chose to have my DNA. Like you didn't do that, but we give a compliment on character. It doesn't hit as well. You know, it's like people would rather be complimented on their looks than
I don't know. I'd rather be told I'm a kind, good person.
Yeah, but I'm just saying in general.
I look beautiful.
Yeah, but I'm saying in general, like it's, you know.
But you're right. Yeah, that takes no effort. Like that.
It's nothing
that
that
isn't
you
even
did.
something you
Like,
controlled.
I mean,
even if you put your makeup on and you did your hair and whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's not. That's and it's gone. It's going to be gone. That's like the point of this whole thing is like, and men shouldn't rely solely on their status because it can be wiped out, and women shouldn't rely solely on their looks.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same thing. You know, I have these difficult conversations with men too. It's like we have hard truths. There's hard truths about the nature of women that when guys first learn this thing, they get upset and they get angry. And that's where that whole thing comes from. And it's like, no, you need to take the facts and listen to them and say thank you because now you know them and now you can adapt to them. Right. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Them.
Right. And, you know, it's
but
like
that's why I think there are a good majority of women past the wall that know that they're not. And even the women that are saying like, no, we are, that might also be just them trying to convince themselves. Yeah. And I'm not saying that women aren't beautiful and there aren't women that can compete with some women in their 20s, it looks wise. Like, I'm not saying any of that, but I'm saying to both groups of women, don't rely on your looks.
Right, exactly.
Don't rely on them. We're only here telling you that you have a bigger window because men look at you and how young and whatever you are. But I'm not telling those women to rely on that either. If anything, I'm also stressing hard that you need to start figuring out who the hell you are.
Right. Well, and it's also like, you know, it's the same thing I tell guys all the time is that for jobs, when they're trying to get a job, it's like, look, you only need one job. So you don't need 10,000 companies that you get interviews at. Right. So you only need one mate. So would you rather have 10,000 guys interested in you or 50 who match you? Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, it is important, like from like a sheer numbers, but at the same time also, you only need to find one. Yeah.
And the last little thing I'll throw in here because we're running over is that I firmly believe that the person who's meant for you will find you. So it doesn't matter if you have, like you said, 10,000 companies looking at you or 50. What's meant for you will find you as long as you're putting out there the positivity and the kindness and the love that you want back. It's law of attraction, which we'll get a little bit more into, I think, on next episode. And, you know, the stories we tell ourselves and things like that. Because it is true. Yeah. It is true. A lot of it is true. So if you're 20 or if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years old, that, you know, if you are just being the best version of yourself and you're looking for the love that you put out and give to other people, you will get that back. Yeah. I can't tell you the timeline. Right. But I know that you will.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And if you have that love standard that I'm now going to have to write a book about.
Yeah, the love standard.
Then you can't go wrong.
All right. I guess we should talk about our shit real quick. So what's our shit for the week? Oh, it was about this topic. It was just the thing when you read the book. And then, but it wasn't even really a big
But that was
thing.
a lot of, I think, miscommunication or misunderstanding. And then, because I definitely wasn't trying to offend you, but you were offended and I apologized for that. And, you know, I wasn't trying to attack your character.
And I understood where it came from because it's a very threatening thing. It's, you know, like you said, it's like, this doesn't feel very hopeful. It makes me afraid. I'm sure, you know, that's what, so I get it. So, but yeah, it's just some of the way that it was talked about made me feel a little disrespected, but we handled it and so.
And here we are.
And here we are, So, but it was good because, I mean, it resulted in this episode, which was important because it was something that, like, we needed to figure out.
Well, it's something, too, that needs to be talked about more, like more in depth because, like the day after you and I had that conversation, our daughter was reading a book, and in the book, the guy was like, I like her because she's young. And she visibly was like, ew, that's gross. Like, why? That's like the characteristic that he's pointing out about her.
Right.
And so she's 13 years old and she's not even exposed to a lot of social media. And so women just don't get it. They don't understand why men care so much.
Right.
And if they just read something like that, if she just reads something like that, they hear, oh, I'm only valuable when I'm young.
Right.
But the thing is, you're not. Granted, you do have more options.
Right.
And that's beneficial to you, is having more options. But that's not all that there is. But so many people, or even like books, perpetuate these things. And a woman wrote that book. And so, you know, she's probably heard it the same way. And that's why she put it in there, because she knows that that's something a man would say.
Yeah.
But somebody needed to talk about this.
Right.
And I hope people get to watch this.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anybody else who's talked about this.
Yeah. And don't shame men for it, because it's the same thing as like women like a tall guy. It's a preference. It's a biological preference. It's built into your DNA that you prefer a man that's in taller stature, just like a man prefers a woman that's younger. Those are just, like, we don't need to shame each other. Women get shamed for liking tall guys all the time too, and that's not right.
I mean, as long as men aren't leaving women that they supposedly love when they're older,
of course,
for something young, because that's the difference. Is like women aren't leaving their short husband or husband that's as tall as him for another man. Because a lot of women, if they're happy and they're in love, it's fine. But a lot of women are afraid that even if a man is happy and in love with you, or seems like he is, he would leave you for a younger woman, because that's something that they can't control.
Yeah, but shaming people for their preferences is what I'm getting at, which are the things that
you shouldn't shame people for what they like, but men also should not be chasing that if they have a woman that they love.
Exactly.
So.
All right. Well, that's it for our super duper long 2-part episode. If you didn't see part 1, I don't know why you've watched this.
That's true.
Like,
you made it till the end of this one. Now you're going to need to
go ahead. But you might as well just start at episode 1 at the very beginning, and watch all the episodes and catch yourself back up. But so if you got a question for us, you can email us at betterthanperfectpodcast@gmail.com. And leave us a review. If you actually, don't leave us a review. No, we don't want your reviews.
No, we do. But
all right.
We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Through every fall.